Have you ever felt that invisible weight controlling your every reaction? I ask because, for so long, I was at the mercy of my own emotions, never quite understanding why they were so intense, so unpredictable, so inevitable. This lack of control, this constant feeling that anything could throw me off balance, was something I carried with me for years. The frustrations, the pain, the sense of being trapped by my own impulses, it all felt unshakable. And the worst part, these emotions didn't just take over my mind. They spilled out into my life, affecting my relationships, my work, my dreams. Deep down, I knew I couldn't go on like this. I needed a way to break free from this emotional prison. But where to start? This video will change your life. Watch it all the way to the end and discover something you never expected. Don't skip. The ending is unmissable. I used to believe that my emotions were simply who I wasn't changeable, like they were part of my identity. Every time something went wrong, I'd feel this flood of anger or sadness, and it was as if I had no choice but to drown in it. It was painful to feel so helpless against my own mind. I would get frustrated, asking myself why I couldn't be stronger, why I couldn't just shake it off like others seemed to. These feelings left me in a constant loop of disappointment, always wondering if I'd ever be able to change. Emotions are powerful, almost primal forces within us. They can push us to great heights or drag us down in an instant. But when they become something we can't control, they take on a different power that weakens us, that limits us, that keeps us stuck. And for the longest time, I thought this was my reality. I would ask myself, is this just who I am? Feeling like a prisoner to my reactions made me question my own strength, my own ability to face life with resilience. This emotional turmoil didn't stay confined to my inner world. It bled into my relationships. Friends, family, loved ones all felt the brunt of my unchecked emotions. Small misunderstandings became big conflicts, and moments that should have been joyful often turned sour. It was painful to realize that, while I wanted to build stronger bonds, I was the one weakening them, and this only fed my self-doubt further, reinforcing the belief that I couldn't escape this cycle. At work, things were no better. My reactions followed me like shadows, influencing my focus and my motivation. Every criticism felt personal, every setback like a wall I'd never overcome. It was draining, constantly battling my own mind, feeling like I was falling short of what I knew I could achieve. I'd sit there, wondering if anyone else had ever felt this way, trapped by something so intangible, yet so overpowering. Finally, after all these years of struggle, I reached a point where I couldn't ignore it any longer. Something had to give. I realized that if I wanted to live a life where I wasn't ruled by my emotions, I needed to take action. But what action? That question haunted me, leading me to search for answers in books, teachings, anywhere that might offer a glimpse of hope. And then, as if by fate, I discovered Paramahansa Yogananda and his teachings on emotional mastery. When I first came across Yogananda's teachings, I wasn't expecting much. I'd tried so many things already, each promising some new breakthrough or technique that never quite worked for me. But Yogananda's words hit differently. He spoke about emotions not as enemies to be battled, but as energies to be understood and transformed. This was the first time I'd heard someone suggest that the real power was already inside me, waiting to be unlocked, rather than something I needed to acquire from outside. One of his teachings that resonated deeply was the idea of self-awareness as a key to emotional freedom. Yogananda believed that by understanding the origins of our reactions, we could learn to control them rather than letting them control us. This shifted something inside me. Suddenly, my emotions felt like they weren't these random, overpowering forces. They were responses that I could begin to understand, like messages trying to tell me something deeper. So, I started paying attention. Every time I felt anger, sadness, or frustration bubble up, I asked myself why. I didn't try to push it away or ignore it. I sat with it. I began to see patterns, how certain situations triggered old wounds, how unresolved fears would sneak into the present. It was uncomfortable at first, confronting these parts of myself that I'd long avoided. But with each layer I uncovered, I felt a little freer, a little more in control. Yogananda taught that transformation begins with acceptance, not resistance. For years, I had been resisting my emotions, wishing them away, fighting them. Now, I was beginning to see the wisdom in facing them instead. I saw how accepting these parts of myself, even the painful ones, allowed me to start healing. The more I understood my reactions, the less power they held over me. It was as if, by shining a light on them, they started to lose their grip. As I kept practicing, I realized something incredible. I wasn't just gaining control over my emotions, I was becoming more peaceful, more centered. The constant tension in my mind began to ease. This wasn't some quick fix or miracle cure, it was a gradual process, a journey of self-discovery that required patience and honesty. But for the first time, I felt like I was finally moving forward. As I went deeper into Yogananda's teachings, I learned about the power of meditation. He described it as a tool to connect with the core of our being, where peace and strength naturally reside. At first, the idea seemed strange to me, sitting in silence, focusing inward, expecting to find some kind of clarity. But I was willing to try anything that could help me break free from the emotional cycles I'd been trapped in for so long. I remember the first time I sat down to meditate. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, all competing for attention, but Yogananda's words encouraged me to keep going. He said that, with time, the mind would calm, like a lake settling after a storm. I stayed with it, breathing deeply, focusing on that calm I so desperately wanted to reach. It wasn't easy. My emotions rose up, almost as if they were resisting this new peace I was trying to create. But slowly, something changed. Day by day, I noticed moments of stillness, brief yet profound. It was as if a door was opening inside me, leading to a place I didn't know existed. Yogananda taught that this inner peace was our true nature, buried beneath layers of fear and habit. I was beginning to understand. Each time I meditated, I felt like I was peeling away those layers, getting closer to that quiet strength within. This practice of meditation didn't just stay on the mat. It started to spill over into my daily life. I noticed that, when confronted with situations that used to trigger me, I had a new response, one of calm observation rather than immediate reaction. It felt like I was finally seeing the world without the cloud of my emotions coloring every experience. I had found a sense of space, a buffer that allowed me to pause, reflect, and respond with clarity. Meditation became my sanctuary, a place where I could return to find balance, no matter what was happening around me. Yogananda had shown me that the mind, when trained, can be a source of profound peace rather than a prison of endless reaction. I realized that I was no longer controlled by the waves of emotion that once felt so overwhelming. Instead, I was learning to surf those waves, to ride them with awareness and purpose. As I continued on this path, I began to see a shift, not just within me, but in how I related to others. Yogananda's teachings on compassion started to resonate in a new way. He spoke of compassion as a bridge between ourselves and the world around us, a way to connect without letting others' emotions or actions shake our own peace. This was a revelation for me. I realized that the same balance I was creating inside could extend outward, touching my relationships, my work, my entire world. I began approaching situations with a gentler heart. Rather than reacting defensively or emotionally, I found myself pausing, breathing, and choosing compassion. This wasn't about letting people walk over me or ignoring my own needs. It was about responding with understanding instead of frustration. When a friend or colleague acted out, instead of being pulled into their energy, I stayed centered, allowing myself to empathize without losing my balance. This practice of compassion brought a new depth to my relationships. I noticed that by staying calm and centered, I could offer a presence that felt stable and supportive to others. Conversations became easier, conflicts less frequent. My connections grew stronger, not because I was trying to change anyone else, but because I was changing how I showed up. It felt like I was creating a space where others felt seen and heard without judgment. Yogananda emphasized that compassion isn't a passive act, it's a form of strength, a choice we make to act from a place of peace rather than ego. This changed everything for me. I no longer felt the need to win arguments or prove my point. Instead, I wanted to understand. The more I practiced, the less tension I felt, and the more naturally peaceful my life became. As my compassion deepened, so did my gratitude. I started seeing challenges as opportunities to grow, rather than obstacles to avoid. With each encounter, I felt a sense of purpose, knowing that my journey was about more than just controlling my emotions. It was about living with an open heart, finding strength in understanding, and sharing that with the world around me. Looking back, I see just how much I've transformed. The emotional storms that once controlled me now feel like distant memories, and the constant weight I carried has been lifted. Thanks to Yogananda's teachings, I learned that true freedom isn't about changing the world around us. It's about changing our inner world, mastering our responses, and embracing peace from within. The journey wasn't easy, but each step brought me closer to a life that felt lighter, more authentic, and infinitely more fulfilling. The peace I've found isn't some unattainable state reserved for the spiritually gifted. It's something we all carry within. Through self-awareness, meditation, and compassion, I discovered that each of us has the power to break free from the grip of our emotions. Yogananda showed me that the mind, once disciplined, becomes an ally rather than an enemy. This wasn't just a philosophical idea. It was a lived experience, a tangible shift in how I see myself and the world around me. Now, I approach each day with a quiet confidence, knowing that my emotions no longer have the final say. They're simply passing waves on the surface of a much deeper ocean. I'm no longer tossed around by them. Instead, I ride them with grace and resilience. The teachings of Yogananda taught me that I could be steady, that I could find peace even in the midst of life's most challenging moments. This wasn't something outside of me. It was a power I had all along. And this is why I'm sharing my story. If you feel trapped, if you're tired of being controlled by your emotions, know that there's a way out. The journey may not be easy, but every step is worth it. Imagine a life where you're no longer defined by your reactions, where peace and purpose are your constant companions. This is possible, it's real, and it starts within you. So, I invite you to take that first step. Ask yourself, are you ready to reclaim control, to embrace the strength within? If you want to continue exploring these insights and deepen your journey, subscribe to this channel, activate notifications, and join me as we uncover the path to a more balanced, fulfilling life. Let's walk this journey together, finding peace one step at a time.